This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, last week, concerns over the new variant spurred large swings in markets. Well, this week, emerging market stocks fell close to a one-year low, tracking losses in Chinese tech stocks. MSCI's index of emerging market stocks shed 0.7% on the day. On the continent, Egypt's blue chip index, the EJX 30, added 1%, gaining for a fourth session in 5, breaking the resistance level of 11,500 points. South Africa's JSE firmed up just slightly as investors weigh Omicron information and, of course, expectations around the U.S. Fed monetary policy decision. Now, also coming up on today's show. MTN shares up 3% after listing in Uganda despite undersubscription. 2 out of every 3 young people in South Africa are unemployed. We'll take a look at those statistics. And more on the town in Egypt that runs on tires, literally. Well, let's start off today's show in Uganda. The country's largest mobile telecom operator, MTN, has officially listed on Uganda's Securities Exchange. Though the offer was undersubscribed, attracting only 60% of targeted value, shares were off to a positive start, closing the day 2.5% stronger. Now, the IPO attracted more than 20,000 local investors in the telecom company, which is a unit of South Africa's MTN Group. Here's CGTN's Michael Baleke with more.
Yes. Congratulations.
MTN Uganda's first day of trading. The company's shares went up by 2.5%, trading at 205 Uganda shillings per share at the opening. MTN says the listing on the stock exchange is a strategy by the group to drive local ownership in the markets within which they operate.
MTN Uganda has fulfilled the objectives of the national broadband policy. We have increased our Ugandan ownership from previously less than 4% of the company to now, today, more than 15% of MTN Uganda is owned by Ugandans.
The listing reduces the ownership of MTN Group in MTN Uganda from 96% to 83%. This aligns with the Uganda Communications Commission's new licensing requirements for telecom firms with the national operator's license to list at least 20% of their shares.
This is a big deal for the government and the people of Uganda. With this transaction, Ugandans now have a stake in one of the notable growth sectors in the country.
More than 21,000 people applied and bought the shares, and 87% of the shares were allocated to Ugandan investors. The MTN Uganda listing has more than doubled the market value of Uganda's Securities Exchange from $1.1 billion US dollars to $2.3 billion US dollars. The listing has also increased the number of trading accounts on the stock exchange from 38,000 to over 100,000. The Capital Markets Authority says this growth has made Uganda attractive to more offshore investors.
The categorization of Uganda as a frontier market will go a long way in attracting foreign capital to Uganda, especially from the global fund managers that only invest in markets that have a categorization.
Results from the MTN IPO show the initial public offering was undersubscribed, with MTN only securing around 60% of its target amount, raising $150 million US dollars. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, let's head to South Africa now, where youth unemployment is at a staggering 66.5%. This is the official rate for youth aged between 15 and 24. Now, unofficially, the figure is estimated to be over 70%. Even with tertiary education, young people there ready to enter the workforce are battling to find jobs. According to Statistics South Africa, a further 500,000 people in the country were discouraged and stopped looking for work in the last 3 months. Here's Sumitra Naidu with the details.
The prospects are bleak for young people trying to find work in South Africa. Shanae Kader is 23 years old. She completed her second degree in 2020 and is still struggling to find a job.
I studied psychology at Wits University and I had finished my second degree last year. I actually have been looking for a job since before I finished my undergrad, which was about 2 years ago. So when I was in my final year of my undergrad degree, I started looking for jobs in case I don't get into honors. So I've been searching and it's hard because you need experience.
Despite several attempts and ambitious plans to create jobs, there's been little success. South Africa's unemployment rate is at a new record of 34.9%. Some experts believe education is not in line with the workplace, while some feel the poor state of the economy is to blame.
The kind of higher education degrees that South Africa produces do not necessarily meet the demand of the labor market or what the kind of jobs that are out there. In other words, graduates study, young people go to institutions of higher education to study, get their qualifications, but cannot find jobs.
According to the stats, 554,000 people stopped looking for employment in the third quarter of this year. This brings the total to 3.9 million people that are discouraged job seekers.
These days when you need to look for maybe a junior role in anything that you've studied and anything you've done, they want 3 to 5 years experience. And how do you expect that from someone who's fresh out of school or just basically been studying for the past 3 to 5 years? And it's really hard because you start growing in this world, you need to be financially stable, you can't basically do anything. Whether you have a small job, it's not enough.
While unemployment is up 10% since 2011, the rate rose almost 5% alone since January 2020 when COVID started.
I came into this year being very hopeful and it was such a letdown because with COVID, it's always ups and downs, push and pull. You don't know what to experience, you don't know what to expect. Look at now, we have a new variant and it's just very difficult, especially from an unemployed graduate perspective, because when I was in undergrad, I had searched for jobs and there was steady things, applications open, and then in less than 2 months, it all closed. Instead of people looking for jobs, they were getting rid of people in their companies.
The efforts to create jobs in the last decade have shown little success. Some experts believe it's time for a complete overhaul in strategy. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's now take apart those unemployment numbers further with Chiedza Madzima, Head of Operational Risk Research at Fitch Solutions. Great to have you with us today on the show, Chiedza. Now, it certainly is quite a worrying trend for the country. Over 500,000 stopped looking for employment in the third quarter of this year. You believe that high youth unemployment especially is a disaster in the making. Explain to us why.
Great. Thank you for having me on your show today. So in a nutshell, South Africa's official unemployment rate increased to a record high of 34.9% in Q3 of this year. And the reality on the youth end of the spectrum is more alarming, where of course the latest official data reflects an unemployment rate of 66.5% for those under 25, with a labor force participation rate of 21.7% in the same cohort. And this comes at a time when inflationary pressures continue to mount and economic growth prospects are set to moderate further going into 2022, meaning higher cost of living against the backdrop of much slower growth. And in the latest job reports, of course, those who are not economically active also increased by 988,000. So while the informal sector at the same time is showing a rise in jobs to the tune of 238,000 over the third quarter compared to 2020. So we're seeing an increase in unemployment alongside increasing inequality and higher informalization of the labor market. And at the same time, almost 27.8 million South Africans are social grant recipients, which is about 46% of the population. And for the majority of recipients, this is their main source of income. So that's almost 27.8 million people dependent on social grants against 14.3 million people who are unemployed. So more people in the country are reliant on grants than those that earn a regular monthly salary. So the demands on the state are also at record highs at a time when the government is under pressure to pursue fiscal consolidation. So we believe that if unemployment trends carry on in this trajectory, more people will be reliant on welfare, tax revenues will be negatively impacted, and already high inequality will widen. The longer people stay out of the labor market, the higher the risk of skills attrition, and less jobs also present risks to private consumption. On the social front, South Africa will likely face more recurrent bouts of social unrest and service delivery protests and higher poverty and crime levels in an already high crime environment. And on the political level, it poses challenges for the ANC going into the 2024 elections. And it's not just for the ANC, it affects all political parties where there's a broad lack of participation in the political sphere from the largest potential group of the voting population. So this was, of course, reflected in the very low turnout in the most recent municipal elections, showing a lack of confidence in the political and, by extension, I suppose, the economic systems. And lack of economic participation, in effect, suffocates positive or constructive political participation, and it drives further polarization and social upheaval. And when people lose faith in the system, they seek alternative and sometimes violent means to show their discontent, as we saw in July of this year. So certainly the youth need a stronger stake in the future that they're hurtling towards in order to reduce risks to overall stability in the country.
That is quite right. And as you mentioned, 27 million on social grants. And let's delve into how that's going to affect public finances going forward, because we know the rising rate of joblessness could mean more pressure on authorities to extend relief measures. How long do you think we can expect to see, especially COVID-19 relief packages lasting? Could, of course, this new numbers and this fact undermine efforts to stabilize public finances going forward?
Oh, most certainly. So the 350 Rand social relief distress grant, which is equivalent to about $22 per month. So that's less than $1 a day. This grant is due to end in March of next year. But of course, the government has faced increasing calls to replace the social grant with a form of basic income grant. Some unions also calling for 1,500 Rand monthly grant for unemployed South Africans above the age of 18. And of course, in August, we saw a green paper published by the Department of Social Development, formally proposing to introduce a basic income grant for South Africans with options ranging from just about 500 Rand to around 1,300 Rand a month, where the lowest cost option would add another 200 billion Rand each year to the government's expenditure. So there doesn't seem to be much support or much scope for these moves just yet from Treasury. So yes, there is more pressure to extend relief measures. There's a strong need to extend relief measures, but the fiscal sustainability of these moves is questionable. And over and above everything, these are short-term solutions to longer-term structural problems. And one can only kick the can down the road for so long until you eventually run out of road. And here we're seeing the government run short of fiscal road, as it were. And in the most recent medium-term budget policy statement, South Africa's finance minister actually reiterated the government's commitment to fiscal consolidation and the target of a primary budget surplus by the 2024-2025 fiscal year. But at the same time, the finance minister also said the government will present further interventions on South Africa's social safety net in the upcoming February national budget speech based on the country's existing poverty lines. So there's a little bit of mixed messaging there, as the Treasury seems to be leaning more towards tightening the purse, but faces a tough balancing act to try and protect the most vulnerable members of the population, which are increasing. So we're likely to continue to see a patchwork of short-term measures to alleviate some of the social challenges in the quarters ahead, but nothing quite concrete or sustainable is immediately apparent here.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do have to leave it there, Chiedza, but thank you so much for joining us on the show and for those great insights. That, of course, is Chiedza Madzima, Head of Operational Risk Research at Fitch Solutions. Well, let's move on now to Egypt. The country's Ministry of Health has set up vaccination booths in some of the city's malls to boost its coronavirus vaccination drive. This is amid rising fears of the spread of the new Omicron variant. Now, the country has not yet detected any cases of the new variant, and health authorities there say necessary measures have been taken to monitor the situation across the country. Of course, Egypt has suspended direct flights to and from South Africa. The country has also announced it will activate a plan to offer COVID-19 vaccine booster shots for senior citizens, as well as people with chronic diseases and healthcare workers. The government has set a target of vaccinating 40% of Egypt's population of just 100 million by the end of this year.
It'll make Egypt a lot more safer because, for example, other countries who aren't getting vaccinated yet, they will have a lot more cases, which will eventually lead to a lot more deaths. But I think it's important that Egypt, gets vaccinated, and so everyone will be safe, so it becomes a safer place.
There are many people who have been vaccinated, which makes symptoms a lot less. All of us should get vaccinated. We have to see the world around us, and it is a necessary step. It is just like any other vaccine.
And now let's turn our attention to some corporate headlines. South Africa's BioVac Institute is set to commence the manufacture of Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine by early next year. And this comes after the company received the drug substance from Europe. Now, BioVac's fill and finish deal with Pfizer, announced in July, will make it one of the few companies processing COVID-19 shots in Africa. Meanwhile, MTN South Africa says it is planning to make the use of vaccines mandatory and is prepared to fire employees that do not comply. The company adds that it will start implementing the policy from January, becoming the biggest company yet to state that it will terminate employment contracts for non-compliance by workers. Meanwhile, protests ensued in South Africa's Port Edward on Sunday over plans by the Royal Dutch Shell to do seismic oil exploration in the Wild Coast. Environmental enthusiasts say the activity is a threat to marine life in the vital whale breeding grounds along the eastern coastal belt of South Africa. This comes after a South African court dismissed an application filed by the environmentalists, deeming the so-called threat to marine life as unproven. And finally, Alibaba Group Holdings says it will reorganize its international and domestic e-commerce businesses and replace its chief financial officer. This comes amid changes with an onslaught of competition, as well as a slowing economy and a regulatory crackdown. The company is expected to form two new units, International Digital Commerce and China Digital Commerce, as part of efforts to become more agile and to accelerate its growth. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's head into a short break now. Here's a look at what's still to come. Tanzania's central bank considers rolling out its own digital currency. And we look at Angola's bet on special economic zones for economic revival.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
It's a little tense here. Bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas. So it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here. Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
Welcome back. Now, the Central Bank of Tanzania is planning to introduce a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC, after several countries on the African continent announced similar initiatives. If successful, Tanzania will be among a growing list of countries who are currently exploring the rollout of digital currencies. Yes, CGTN's Isaac Lukando with the latest.
Tanzania's currency, the shilling, has been coin and paper-based since 1966. Following in the footsteps of Nigeria, Tanzania could soon have a digital version of its currency that will operate alongside the physical one.
The Central Bank of Tanzania has already begun preparations for the possibility of having its own digital currency. The preparations involve building the capacity of experts, increasing awareness of stakeholders, and researching.
With a growing number of Tanzanians trading in cryptocurrencies, along with the government's desire to embrace them, experts believe the introduction of a digital currency will help the government answer critical questions on cryptocurrency.
How to regulate cryptocurrency, how to deal with the technology, how to help even those guys who are trading cryptocurrency, even startups in Tanzania based on blockchain. How can are they going to help them?
According to the International Monetary Fund, there are some 110 countries that are at some stage of developing their own digital currency. At least 7 countries, including Nigeria, have already launched theirs. With $7.8 billion worth of mobile money transactions monthly, the central bank sees digital currency as a natural evolution in its quest to embrace an increasingly digital world. It believes that having a digital currency will not only allow more Tanzanians to access financial services, but will also be cost-effective and will allow for easier tracking. Despite the benefits, experts warn that millions of digitally illiterate citizens could hinder the success of the currency.
A lot of people in Tanzania, particularly, they have got no access of internet. And you can see that this technology need internet, need some sort of skills, need guys who are somehow literate. So you can see that it is a challenge.
It is not clear when a rollout of the digital currency can be expected, but if all works out, using a digital currency could be a new normal for Tanzanians in the not-too-distant future. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Meanwhile, in Egypt, the central bank has allocated about $3.5 billion to help farmers switch to modern irrigation systems that will be more water efficient. Well, Yasser Hakim takes a closer look at this initiative and, of course, its benefits.
Egypt is a country suffering from acute water poverty levels. That's why the government is pushing to apply methods that will make optimum use of limited water resources. This includes introducing water-efficient irrigation systems. Saber Salah, a farmer, had learnt of the system from a friend and applied it on his vegetables and strawberry crops.
Before, I used the flood irrigation, which was harmful because it creates fungus in the crop, so I had to use more fertilizer, more pesticides, and more workers on the land. The drip irrigation saves all this and is water efficient because you control the amount used rather than flooding the land and wasting a lot of water.
Saber says it's essential to expand this system nationwide.
Farmers want to install this system, but they need support. The farmer doesn't have the ability. It costs 10 to 12,000 Egyptian pounds for each fedan, plus other costs that will incur thousands per more fedan. Banks take so long with complicated and tough conditions for a loan. It takes months. Farmers needed another way of funding.
The central bank, along with the Ministry of Agriculture, have intervened with a $3.5 billion fund to help farmers switch to the modern irrigation system. Dr. Ala Azzouz is leading this ambitious project.
This is the first time zero-interest loans are offered to farmers.
They can also repay the loan for up to 10 years, which doesn't place any burden on the farmer's income. The protocol is about 3 forms of cooperation. First is to fund the infrastructure needed to install the new system. Second is to secure financing and to install the new irrigation systems. The third is providing all kinds of assistance, financial and technical, free of charge, to teach and help the farmers how to apply and operate the modern irrigation systems.
According to Dr. Ala, besides being water efficient, the new drip irrigation network will increase production per fadan for the farmer, lower the cost for cultivating a piece of land, reduces the workforce, and that translates into more profits for the farmers. But it is also in line with other strategies set by the North African country.
The water consumption differs with each crop, but the average amount of water saved in the modern irrigation system is about 30%, so our water consumption drops by 30%. The saved water will also be used to benefit the whole country. It will be used to irrigate new pieces of land and establish large agricultural projects to help us with our main goal of achieving food security.
The government announced that the $3.5 billion allocated for the new system will cover 4 million fadans out of the country's 10.5 million cultivated fadans of land. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, data from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development shows that there are an estimated 189 operating special economic zones in Africa. Most of these are well established and are present in about 47 of the 54 countries. Well, CGTN's Angelo Coppola looks at Angola's bet on these zones for economic revival from the capital, Luanda.
The well-established Luanda-Bengu Special Economic Zone is experiencing a resurgence, and it's based on getting a few fundamentals right.
The infrastructure is very nice. The energy is quite stable. There is water here. The roads are nice. Security is also good, so a lot of benefit compared to any other place you can find in Luanda, in Angola, yes.
Keeping existing business owners happy is important, but so is the search for new investments.
We now need to expand by bringing in new quality FDI from other geographies. Of course, those ones need to be aligned with the Angolan government diversification program. As you see, Angola was very depending on oil. Now we want to move away from that dependence.
COVID has had a significant impact on investment decisions around the world, and yet some businesses have continued operating and in some cases expanding.
We're going to expand to some other new areas here in this place as well. We're going to build some warehouses in the backside. We have some land available. The packaging business will keep growing in the country as the new manufacturing is coming up. So we expect to grow in that area. On the plastic packaging, the one-way, the boxes for the so many industries are coming up here. So expecting to grow in that area.
Like any business, the special economic zone needs to attract investments. It's got to be self-sufficient.
Now we are ready to grow in a sustainable way. Of course, it's very important to grow in a sustainable way. And this is why we are also having in place a strategic plan and a bankable business plan, which is key to find finance.
Entrepreneurs find a way to make a business niche for themselves. Those that are successful create their own niches. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Luanda, Angola.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a short break now, but still to come on the show. China's Political Bureau of the CPC meets to map out its economic strategy for 2023. And the International Motor Expo debuts for the first time in Hong Kong. Change is on the horizon. Through the shifting of time, Africa's emerging tech landscape is creating new channels.
There's a hunger for local African content globally.
Shaped by innovation, carved out by a new generation of digital entrepreneurs, sculpted by a mobile revolution, and trickling down to the most remote corners of the continent. TechSpot is seeking out the new concepts in technology, disrupting Africa's traditional sectors.
You're watching
Now look at other news from the continent making headlines this hour. Ethiopia's state media is reporting that government forces have retaken the strategic towns of Dessie and Kombolcha from the Tigray People's Liberation Forces. Now, the government forces have been reporting critical gains in recent days amid claims that TPLF forces have been withdrawing from parts of the northern regions of Afar and Amhara. Just last week, the government announced that it had retaken the World Heritage Site of Lalibela. And in Sudan, thousands of protesters once again marched into the city of Khartoum and other cities to protest military rule. The protesters are opposed to the Sudanese army decisions to dissolve the Sovereign Council and the Council of Ministers. They are also opposed to the political agreement signed between reinstated Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok and the military leaders. Meanwhile, Tanzanian-born novelist Abdul Razak Gurna has received his medal after he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Swedish ambassador to Britain, Michaela Kumlin-Granit, handed the medal over to Gurna at a ceremony in London on Monday. The 72-year-old Gurna is expected to attend the main award ceremony in Stockholm on December 10th. Gurna is known for his prolific works on colonialism and the plight of refugees. And China has donated an additional 500,000 Sinopharm vaccines to Somalia. The Horn of Africa nation has applauded China's efforts to help combat COVID-19 in the country. In April this year, China was the first country to donate over 200,000 doses of vaccines to Somalia. And that's a recap of other top headlines this hour. Well, let's now turn our attention to some international news. The Political Bureau of the Communist Party of China Central Committee held a meeting on Monday to analyze the economic work for 2022. Now, the meeting agreed that China will comprehensively deepen reform and adhere to innovation-driven development. It further added that the next year's economic work will seek steady progress with a continuing proactive fiscal policy and prudent monetary policy. The meeting followed a symposium last week with non-party members to solicit their comments and suggestions on economic work. President Xi Jinping says macro policies should be prudent and effective, while micro policies should stimulate the vitality of market players. He also added that social policies must maintain the bottom line of people's livelihoods. Next year, the Communist Party of China will hold its 20th National Congress. And now a look at economic growth in China for this year and the outlook for next year. According to a blue book released by the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, the economy will grow by 8% this year, surpassing the expected target and ahead of all the other major economies. Now, growth in 2022 will moderate to 5.3% due to the turbulent global economic recovery and, of course, repeated pandemic outbreaks. The Blue Book will also highlight advances made by China in tech innovation and green development, while urging more caution on the pandemic front. It also adds that more supply-side reform and balanced green development are crucial for a healthy economy in the long run. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping has reiterated China's support for multilateralism. He delivered that speech via video to the 2021 Imperial Springs International Forum in southern China's Guangzhou. Here's Shu Hua reporting.
China says it will firmly stand by the core value and basic principles of multilateralism. Chinese President Xi stressed this message loud and clear.
In the world today, the COVID-19 pandemic is still evolving. The global economic recovery is fragile, and climate change poses a significant challenge.
Under the theme Multilateralism 2.0, Global Cooperation on Post-Pandemic Era, this year's forum attracted more than 160 guests from the public sector, business, and academia. President Xi says multilateralism is about having international affairs through consultation, where everybody has a seat at the table.
Some Western countries' multilateralism is actually aimed at a third country, But this is not the case with China's multilateralism, such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. China's multilateralism is actually a response to the challenges we all face. It's open and inclusive.
In September, President Xi proposed a global development initiative aiming to speed up the implementation of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And experts say people can take Chinese leaders at their word.
If one looks at China from outside, one has to fully understand, fully appreciate the performance, the commitment to actual results, the commitment of delivering the results, which has established China for what it is today.
This year marks the centenary of the Communist Party of China. President Xi said one important historical experience is to maintain a global vision and bear in mind the future of humanity. And that remains China's commitment. Xu Hua, CGTN, Guangzhou, Guangdong Province.
Now, China is also working to promote the high-quality development of vocational education in order to support its manufacturing sector and also upgrade its industries. It's adopted policies to support vocational schools and improve the quality of skill-focused education. Here's Lin Nan with the details.
23-year-old Jiang Chenhao is a service advisor in an automobile sales and service company in Shanghai. He started working as a car mechanic in a repair shop 2 years ago and was soon promoted to the current position. He can earn about $15,000 a year, which is a decent amount compared with his peers.
I want to become a director in 5 years and eventually become the general manager of the shop. My bosses are very young, and I think my goals are realistic.
Jiang is a graduate of the Shanghai Communications Polytechnic. He spent the first semester on campus, then started vocational training in the company, and finally became a full-time employee during his last semester.
This model has trained me well with the technical and soft skills to integrate with the company and society. Vocational education led me directly to this job, and I didn't have to spend time on things that I don't like.
Vocational schools have not been a popular choice for many Chinese students and parents due to stereotypes of graduating into underpaid and overworked jobs in harsh conditions.
According to the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security, China has over 200 million skilled workers, including about 58 million high-skilled workers. The country is improving its vocational education to cultivate more high-skilled talents and meet the surging demand for industry upgrading. So it's vital to raise payment levels and redefine the social status of vocational school graduates.
Big companies are recruiting a large number of vocational school graduates, whose income is often no less than that of college graduates. Our graduates can become senior blue collars, and their career pathway can be as bright as college graduates.
Creating a more standardized and institutionalized employment environment for skilled workers is also important.
People need job security. We need a management mechanism which can integrate vocational education and employment at a higher level to make them feel confident about their career choices.
China plans to create a modern vocational education system nationwide by 2025. It's expected to be highly competitive to match China's economic growth. Lin Nan, CGTN, Shanghai.
Now, besides trade, the United Arab Emirates is an important overseas investment destination for China. For example, China's Energy Engineering Group, or the CEEC, is building one of the world's top 5 seawater desalination projects just north of Dubai. When complete, the project will benefit 2 million people living under tropical desert climates.
It's 60 kilometers north of Dubai. One of the world's largest desalination plants is being constructed by China Energy Engineering Group, or CEEC. The Umukwang 150 MIGD desalination plant, when complete, will provide 680,000 tons of clean drinkable water every day to 2 million residents in the UAE.
This 650-meter long breakwater with a 500,000 ton rocks is constructed for protection of intake channel and keeping the intake basin water calm. The seawater then enters in an open intake channel system to be pumped into the plant through the 4 turbines installed at the intake pumping station. The seawater then will be screened in the pumping station before it goes to the pre-treatment process.
CEEC pays attention to protecting marine ecological lives while pre-treating the seawater. The company has a professional team to monitor seawater quality and marine environment on a daily basis. Pre-treated water will enter the first-level reverse osmosis unit. Another crucial green technology takes effect here.
To reduce energy consumption and increase the water recovery rate, we have the energy recovery device next to the reverse osmosis. Compared with other regular modes, this device can help cut energy consumption by 20%. It's a world-leading energy-saving technology.
After being disinfected, treated water will go to 5 huge drinking water tanks before entering user pipelines. Each of these tanks can hold 135,000 tons of water. This Umukwang desalination project is an important part of UAE's 2036 water security strategy. The project is expected to go into operation next August.
And the International Motor Expo debuted for the first time in Hong Kong. It is a platform that connects manufacturers, car dealers, passengers, drivers and designers together. Well, a highlight this year was the Designer Zone, which featured concept cars and supercars such as the Aspark Owl. Here's Annie Cheng, who was there and tells us more.
The International Motor Expo Hong Kong is debuting for the first time. Featuring the theme Mobility Plus, the event is a platform that brings together the world's top builders, brands, designers, and potential investors and partners. New and noteworthy vehicles from over 50 international brands like Bentley and Harley-Davidson are showcased, while collector cars from local car clubs show the evolution of automaking.
Today happened to be my day off. I'm in the car industry, so I purposely came to check it out. I'm here to look at cars because I'm especially interested in Japanese modified cars.
A big highlight is the Designer Zone, where top-graded design studios like CFG Style and Zagato make their presence known with displays of their supercars and concept cars. Called Model E, this is designed by famous Italian house Pininfarina for Foxconn. The exterior design has smart surfaces on the front and rear that lets the car interact with its environment.
For an all-electric and battery-powered sports car, this car has the fastest acceleration rate in the world. Called Owl by Aspark, it can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 1.69 seconds. It's also the world's most powerful electric hypercar.
It helps that the emergence of cars like this comes during a general increase in new auto registrations in Hong Kong, according to government data. And while most businesses have been affected by the pandemic, that may not necessarily be the case for the car industry.
I did hear something from the car dealers. In fact, because of the pandemic, the demand for car is increasing because everybody wants to own their own car so as to safeguard themselves, safeguard their family. So I think for them, it's a real new business opportunities.
The e-motorbike industry is also seeing new opportunities in Hong Kong. Raidu debuts 12 new e-motorcycle brands at this exhibition. It's one of the very few local companies that offers such vehicles in a relatively challenging market here.
The e-motorcycle climate in Hong Kong is very infant. There's a lack of choice. There's a lack of charging facilities available for motorcycles, and there's a lot of miseducation. So the problem with charging in Hong Kong is, although Hong Kong has the highest density of electric chargers, electric motorcycles not allowed. So the most popular bikes right now is removable batteries, so the ones that you can take home and charge at home at your regular port at home, 13A. So that's the one that's been selling right now.
But with the government's goal of banning new registrations of fossil fuel engines by 2035 and hitting zero carbon emissions by 2050, he believes the market for e-motorcycles will accelerate. Meanwhile, aside from adults, there are also kid-friendly sections. Don't let the size fool you. A social group of fathers created these for their kids, and they're heavily modified. And while those four-wheelers are only for viewing, these at the carnival area can definitely be taken for a test drive. Ann Chang, CGTN, Hong Kong.
And on that note, let's take a look at commodity markets today. Oil climbing by $2 a barrel, heading towards $72 on hopes that the Omicron coronavirus variant will have a less damaging economic impact if its symptoms proved mostly mild. Also, the prospect of an imminent rise in Iranian oil exports receded. OPEC Plus also decided last week to continue increasing monthly supply by 400,000 barrels per day in January, even after a slide in prices driven by the Omicron concerns. A quick look at soft commodities. Robusta coffee futures on the ICE exchange rose today, edging towards the prior session's 10-year peak. Prices were supported by fund buying against the backdrop of tightening supplies, as of course the harvest in top Robusta producer Vietnam faced some delays. Well, let's take a short break now, but still to come on the show. There's a town in Egypt that's completely driven by tires. We'll tell you how.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Now, Nigerian startups have contributed more than 20% to the over $6 billion raised by African startups in 2021. This is despite the negative effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on investments. It has been attributed to the support services which have been rendered by a growing number of startup support organizations in the startup ecosystem. Now, one of such organizations is Endeavor Nigeria, which is a Lagos-based organization that supports high-impact entrepreneurs whose companies have potential for large-scale job creation, investment, and innovation in a bid to enhance economic development. Well, CGTN's Deji Bademosi has more on their story.
In recent years, Nigeria has experienced an explosion of startups. At least 3 of the country's startups have attained the unicorn status, having hit the $1 billion valuation. Many more are fast inching their way up there. Despite the rapid growth, though, access to capital, network to potential investors, and transitioning to the global stage are still inherent challenges. And it is mainly for that reason that Endeavor International opened a country office in Nigeria in 2018 to help entrepreneurs in the country dream bigger and scale up successfully.
Provide access to demand-driven services for them. So access to capital, for instance. We help them, we invest in them, and we also help them to raise capital. We help with talent as well. We help with mentorship. So we have a global community of over 4,000 mentors. And so we help them with access to these mentors. And lastly, we help with access to market. Again, because we're in 40 markets, it's easier for us to have conversations around scaling to a different market that we have an office in.
Endeavor Nigeria's mode of operation is quite simple. It surveys the local startup market, identifies startups that are on the verge of scaling, and foster positive business relationships in order to usher in a new era of growth for them.
We're very close to the network and to the ecosystem in general, and so we tend to know the entrepreneurs that are on that verge to be scale-ups or on that trajectory to be scale-ups. And we tend to stay close to them. We tend to even start the journey much earlier than when they're ready to be Endeavor entrepreneurs. And so we would have a first call or first meeting with the entrepreneur, get to know the entrepreneur better, get to know their business better, see where they are in terms of how they fit into our selection process.
In just 3 years of operations, Endeavor Nigeria has given support to 24 entrepreneurs who were decision makers in more than 10 startups, including unicorns, and have continued to record accelerating growth.
Our entrepreneurs, our portfolio companies are doing really well. We do have a unicorn in our portfolio. We also have so many other companies that are raising. Some of them have raised their Series B round. Some of them are currently closing that round and also moving to their Series C. But I think what's really important is that these companies are creating jobs and creating wealth. So just from an Endeavor Nigeria portfolio, in 2020, our portfolio companies made $250 million plus in revenue for the Nigerian market, for the Nigerian economy, and that's a lot for less than 20 companies. And also, if you just look at jobs, for instance, Endeavor portfolio companies have created over 100,000 jobs in Nigeria.
Nigeria has the largest number of startups in the tech ecosystem on the continent, but competitiveness has always been a big drawback. Startup support firms like Endeavor are hoping to change that narrative and help create more global entrepreneurs from Africa's largest economy. DG Bademasi, CGTN, Lagos.
And north of the Egyptian capital lies a village called Minyat Haroun. In recent years, the entire town has been gaining wide attention for its growing tire-based products. Of tire-based products. Minyat Haroun's economy is now based on collecting tires, cutting and shredding them, then embedding them into brand new products that include cars, spare parts, cement production, and even art used in houses. More with CGTN's Adele El Maroui.
70 kilometers north of Cairo, in the heart of the fertile delta, lies Mit El Haroun village. Yet the visuals of agriculture activities dominant in this part of Egypt are absent. This town is almost entirely industrial. Their business is recycling vehicles' tires.
We recycle using safe and eco-friendly ways. The tires are cut and crushed without using furnaces, and therefore no fumes pollute the air. That's how we work.
I worked at this workshop because there are no other kinds of jobs in this village. It's a good job that pays well. All of my family work in tires. No matter what you study in the university, you'll end up in this business.
Before the concept of sustainability and recycling became a global trend, for 3 generations this village has been developing techniques to recycle tires. At first, shoes were made, and the rest of the tires were thrown away. As technology developed, Mit Haroun now recycles 100% of the tires, creating a huge industrial job market.
This business didn't only provide jobs to the residents of this village, it offers jobs for the whole neighboring villages. Unemployment rate here has become 0%. Everyone has a job. Any used tire across Egypt will some way end up here.
The inner rubber tube gets turned back into natural rubber. Wires get extracted to either become construction material or once again melted into iron. If it won't be used to create a handmade product, the rest of the tire is crushed into powder, which gets exported and used in insulation material or plumbing equipment.
Our biggest challenge is the supply of electricity. All this industry here is built upon personal initiatives. The government doesn't support us with the infrastructure needed. Kafr Mit Haroun could be helpful for the entire region. Kuwait, for instance, has one of the world's largest tire dumps, which causes major environmental damages. Our village can absorb tens of millions of tires a year.
This village is surprisingly growing fast that it has an appetite to consume all used tires in the Middle East. With the government support, Mit El Haroun could turn these individual initiatives into an organized industrial zone that could expand much faster than its remarkable current rate. Adel Mahroui, CGTN.
Now, South Africa's Table Mountain was recently named the best tourist destination in Africa. But of course, wildlife crime in the Table Mountain National Park, also in and around Cape Town, remains quite a huge concern. Well, South African National Parks authorities have established a new team of special operations rangers to fight crime in the park. Here's Renee Del Carme with more.
Known as the SEAM Team, this group of Special Operations Rangers will be deployed at sea, in the air and on the mountain. After months of tough physical and mental training, they are ready for action.
The Special Rangers will be responsible for visitor safety, search and rescue, as well as fighting environmental crime on the front line in the war against poaching.
Table Mountain National Park is incredibly unique in terms of its biodiversity location as well as its setting. We are in an urban area, and this gem, this absolute jewel, this World Heritage Site needs to be protected. We are working towards making this park a stronghold for enforcement, that if anyone tries to do anything in this park that is untoward or illegal, that they will be met with the full might of the law that we are able to apply.
People that love our park will treat them with gentle hands. But for the criminals, what we are launching today is just the beginning. We're using intelligence, we're using resources, we're using technology, working within the boundaries of the law with law enforcement agencies to protect our people, to protect the environment.
The new recruits, including members of a highly trained K9 unit, were honored in a passing out parade where they were praised for their dedication.
Today, we really want to salute you for a job well done. Together with the trainers and all the staff and team members in Table Mountain National Park, you made us all proud.
Sandpark says the SEAM team will play an integral part in tightening security as poaching, which went down during the COVID-19 hard lockdown, is once again on the increase. Renadal Calm, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And before we leave it today, a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand strengthening just slightly today on signs that the Omicron variant may be causing mainly mild infections. This morning, the rand was roughly 0.2% firmer than its previous close, as anecdotal accounts from South African doctors and experts suggest that Omicron may be causing less severe clinical symptoms than other coronavirus variants. Meanwhile, Kenya's shilling, little change today. Traders say they expect it to weaken, undermined by dollar demand from general goods importers as well as oil companies in the country. And that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.